Well, as they said, my name is Chad McCoy, and I am a mental health professional. I'm a licensed professional counselor. And so I want to offer you this, what's going to be a horribly dry and bad joke that'll have you shaking your head, but how many therapists does it take to change a light bulb? Show of hands. One, but the light bulb needs to want to change. And that is kind of a core principle of therapy, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So today you guys have heard from a number of different individuals from backgrounds, variety of educations, experiences. And I'm going to pull from my educational experiences. I'm going to pull from my experiences in a therapy office and share with you something that I think has fallen out of favor as a movement in our society. I'm going to talk about how the failure of this movement has dire consequences on our society. And I'm going to share a little bit about my story and my experiences on how that made me a stronger individual so that I could be a stronger person in our society. When I thought about sparks, the first thing that I went to was hanging around auto body shops. If you've ever hung around an auto body shop or a mechanic shop, you tend to pick up a few things. One of those things is if you stick around long enough, someone's going to hand you a wrench and put you to work, which isn't entirely a bad thing. One of the things that you also learn pretty quickly is that engines need necessary and sufficient conditions to be met before they can run. Now, I imagine that many of you here have a car, and when you turn it on, it fires up, and you're like, yes, it's working. I don't have to pay to have someone fix this. But if there is a problem, if you have a problem with your engine, it's usually one of three things. It's going to be a fuel delivery system, it's going to be air delivery system, or it's going to be an ignition system. Fuel, air, or spark. Now, any one of those not working, when you turn the key over, click, 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 doesn't fire up, doesn't go anywhere. Now, when we think about spark and igniting a movement, I believe movements operate under similar principles. There are necessary and sufficient conditions that need to be met in order for that movement to continue. One of those is going to be an ideal state, a goal state, something that we can look out towards, progress towards, aim and affix our gaze. The second one is going to be building upon the successes of the people that come preceding us, that come before us. And then the last one is having enough resources to propel that movement forward. Without any number of those, the movement can falter. The movement can fail. The movement may not go anywhere. Now, the first formal introduction that we get to a movement comes in the form of a family. Now, families operate under those same necessary and sufficient conditions. A goal state, collection of resources to be distributed within that movement for the betterment of that movement, and the building upon successes with each generation. Now, in his best-selling book, Beyond Order, 12 More Rules for Life, Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, a Canadian psychologist, puts it this way: people remain mentally healthy not merely because of the integrity of their own mind, but because they are consistently reminded by those around them how to think, act, and speak. And when there is a breakdown in a movement, a family system, the three aforementioned conditions tend to break apart. When I meet with individuals and I sit across from them in a therapeutic setting, we often come across what I like to call the Aladdin effect. So when we meet Aladdin in that Disney hit movie, what is he doing? He's stealing a loaf of bread. Now, at that time in that culture, you could lose a hand, you could lose an arm, they could kill you. But the way that Aladdin saw it was, if I don't steal the bread, I don't live on very far into the future. If I steal the bread, I have a chance to live into the future. And so he makes the decision to go ahead and steal it. He saw a problem so immediate in his future that he wasn't thinking 6, 10, 12 months down the line. I need to feed myself now so that I can move forward. And family systems are the same way. If you have a problem, a tragedy, something so dire it needs to be taken care of in the moment, you may not be thinking a week down the road. You may not be thinking a month down the road. You shorten your time frame to solve the problems in a hierarchical fashion. Now, I could go into all of the statistics about the breakdown of families. And right now, they're actually pretty stable, and they're kind of making a little bit of a comeback. But any cursory search on Google will take you to all the places that you can find all of the statistics that you would like to know. But I would like to speak about it from the perspective of a mental health professional. Namely, one of the things that we see or we know is that people who find themselves in a divorced family, people who find themselves from a single-parent family, have more than double likelihood of developing a mental health struggle or illness. They're more likely to perform poorly in school, and they're more likely to engage in delinquent behaviors. Any one of those can jeopardize an individual's future, but all of those together can set up a sequence of failures for that individual's life. Now, I'm not going to sit up here and tell you that there is one way that a family system should operate. That's, of course, would be very ignorant of me. I personally have family members who are single parents, and they've been able to raise beautiful, well-rounded, determined, and motivated children who are thriving. Alternatively, I know some family systems in the traditional sense that put the fun in dysfunctional. They're struggling. And so it's not my aim to say this is the way that this should be. It's mainly just pointing out an observation, talking about how it can affect our society. And there's a number of different reasons why people find themselves in a divorce situation, in a single parenthood situation. My father, when he was young, shortly after he was born, his father passed away, my paternal grandfather. My grandmother, who was widowed, years later had married another individual, C.T. McCoy, with whom I share my initials. And during that interim when she was widowed, she was taking care of my father and my uncle. Unfortunately, tragedy struck a second time for my father just before he became an adult. His mother had passed away. Now, my mother, she grew up in a small rural farming community in northern Kansas. They had the things that they needed, oftentimes went without the things that they wanted, but they had all the things that they typically needed. I remember her sharing stories about how often there would be times that they would not have running water in their home. She talked about during Christmas time where my cousins and my brothers and me were all, tearing through our presents, how they would cut figurines from paper and they would then play dolls because they could not afford to go to the store and get them. And they would point out how fortunate we were to have these things. And fortunate we were. Now, both of my parents did attend college. My mother received her degree in business. And my father quickly found out that university was not suited for him. And so he took a small loan and started a business. They were married. And then they, I think, unknowingly engaged in the three necessary and sufficient conditions that I'm speaking to you here today about. They had an idealized goal. They understood as a unit where they were wanting to go. They pooled what resources they had and used them for the betterment of themselves and for my brothers and I. They were able to provide us with time resources, emotional support, and yes, financial as well. After my brothers and I had reached school age, my mom, who had raised us to that point at home, decided to go back to work, thus giving us more financial stability. And with that, they were able to provide more for us, and they always made sure that they were available no matter what was going on. Now, from these strong family systems, whatever the makeup, can come strong individuals. And if you think about your own life, you can pull your strengths from the strengths of your family, from the people that you have surrounded yourself with. And this was a major reason as to why I wanted to go into mental health. I was a very fortunate, privileged individual. I was privileged because the people that came before me made decisions in certain ways, and they were lucky throughout those times. They also worked very hard and always worked towards a goal that benefited everybody. And when I went into mental health, I knew that I might be able to have an impact on other people. So if I can have an impact on a person, just as my family impacted me, that might have a ripple effect through my society, which only serves to benefit me as well. If you think about social media works this way. If I know 10 people and those 10 people know 10 people, my reach can possibly be 100 people. And you carry out the exponents, 2 or 3 people in, and you could have 1 million people that you could reach. And so if you're reaching 1 million people and you can have a positive impact on them, why wouldn't you? Well, maybe because you're suffering from the Aladdin effect, that you can't reach out that far because you're so focused on some of your immediate problems. And people find themselves in immediate problems for an abundance of different reasons as well. Now, most of my work in a therapy office actually is tailored towards obsessive compulsive disorder. And obsessive compulsive disorder doesn't just affect that individual. It does affect all the people around them. And oftentimes that family system is drawn in to their disorder, to their mental illness. And so if you ask any therapist worth their salt in a therapeutic setting, they would say when you're working with an individual, you're oftentimes working with the family. And a strong family unit is a great prognostic indicator for success. I also have found out through my work with the OC community, the obsessive compulsive community, that there aren't an abundance of resources for these individuals. There are probably a handful of therapists in our area that have the training that can effectively work with families and individuals who suffer from obsessive compulsive disorder. So a lot of my work, yes, is in the office in a therapeutic setting working with individuals, but it's also creating educational videos, speaking, being that voice for those who don't have a voice. Currently, I'm working on an OCD in Oklahoma resource where all of these things can come together and they can help those who are suffering. Because again, if I can take what I've been given, what I've been so privileged to have, and make an impact on an individual in my society, they may be stronger for the people that they can impact. And that could be an exponential impact for our society. So as I wrap up talking about family and all these sorts of things, I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment and at least thank a few of them that made it possible for me standing up here today. To my parents and my brothers, who were always so encouraging no matter what decisions I made, and their unwavering love and steadfastness made it possible for me to be a stronger individual. To my wife and my 2 sons who I wear on my wrist here, Brooks and Tabor, they always and consistently remind me that I should strive for better and be a stronger individual so that they in turn can be a stronger individual, so that they in turn can make impacts in their world. And to all of my professors here from the counseling program at the University of Central Oklahoma, thank you for giving me the skills that I needed to go out and have an opportunity to make an impact on my society. Thank you for teaching me to look outside of my own precepts about how the world operates and look at individuals and meet them where they're at and get them where they would like to go. And to all of you here today who have shared in these discussions, I hope that this might spark some interest in you to go out and change your community. Thank you.